the remaining time that we have for Q&A for our audience. Okay, so just a short recap of what has occurred this afternoon. We've seen a slideshow wherein I focus on different relationships we have with photography and different types of work, pretty much. Of course, being a work in progress, most of those works that I've shown earlier were works in progress, either leaning towards the book or leaning towards the zine. Now, with Veejay's talk, jumping off from the slideshow, was that he emphasized on authenticity of making photographic work and how it can be achieved or how it should be done. And it's a marriage of form, content, and the photographer's vision. Then we saw a glimpse of Indonesian photography in Rony's presentation, where he also shares stories of the processes that Indonesians do and what he does as well in making his book Encounters and Man Mountains of the Sea, and how it all came about, and of course how they do it in their scene. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce to our panel Ms. Katya Guerrero. Let's give a round of applause. She has been a very great help to the photographic community. Like as we've said earlier, Veejay and I, Pioneers Studio Art Books has always been a host to photographic events that were not possible when I was starting 10 years ago. But now we have such a place like these. So again, another round of applause. Thank you again. Okay, let me start my timer. Parang tayo paligaw. For the very first, I want to keep this discussion medyo wag tayo masyadong formal. I want it to be a sort of a talk show format. So it's okay to be informal. If you have, we'll open questions later. But I want to start with Veejay and Rony first. I want to ask them probably at least the most difficult part of making a long-term project that I encounter. And it's actually starting. How did you know when you were making Baseco or Signals? When did you know, okay, I think I'm ready to do this? Or for Rony's case, with Encounters it was very fluid. But for Men, Mountains, and the Sea, for the projects that you both did, how did you know that, okay, I'm ready, I'm gonna shoot?
Ready in what term? What do you mean?
Because you're currently, some of the things that I have always encountered, especially working and editing work from younger photographers, is that, do you think this is good enough? Should I pursue? Should I continue? Or what do you think a work is viable to become long-term?
In my case kasi, I started as a news photographer. So parang it was inherent that, like I said, that to complete that cycle, kailangan mo talaga siya i-publish. So, publishing then, when I was starting, the only options was, it's either you publish through traditional formats, traditional platforms like newspaper and magazines. So ideally, as an editorial photographer or a news photographer, ang lagi mong kakampi is the publisher. So it can be a glossy, it can be a newspaper, it can be, wala pang online masyado nun. So after producing work or the intention of producing work, either it's personal, long-term assignment, ang intention is to have it published by hopefully an esteemed publication. So if you're doing, when I started doing Baseco, the intention there was, of course, publishing it. But the intention first was to create the narrative that parang I had in mind, or the story that I had in mind, yung observed narrative. So coming from, things that I mentioned earlier. Observed image, and then later on na naging personal siya. And then in the course of doing a long-term project, kasi yung long-term, very technical term naman yun. It can be long-term even if you did it in 6 months, a year. It doesn't have to be years and years.
It's not necessarily time-bound.
Hindi siya time-bound. Long-term meaning, I think mas apt na term yung personal work. Personal meaning you jump off na from an assigned work. Meaning ikaw na lang yan, independent.
Well,
Veejay seems to answer everything. But for my approach, for like, of course, it's different than assignment or commission. I need this. You can go shoot Rony. So you know what you have to do. With personal project, it comes with curiosity. What do you want to see, and what do you want to find out? So when Man Mountains about to happen, I was just like, there's no Man Mountains in the sea. Just like, okay, maybe I want to go to this city called Yogyakarta, because I had a friend there and he offered me a place to crash for 2 weeks. So it started from there. And I want to see the place because it's located between a volcano, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, Marapi, which erupts like every 5 years. And it's, in the south part, it's like the Southern Sea, where Yogyakarta people believe there's a queen residing in the sea. So I was like, okay, based on that myth, I want to find out how I feel about it. And whether I'm gonna be, what I'm going to feel and what I find out over there. And of course, I did a story about the Yogyakarta, and for 2 weeks, had a good time. And after that, I think I want to find more about this kind of feeling. I'm feeling that maybe there's more places like this. So I started finding these places, and I found it, of course. I found a few. Not every places that I went has the same feeling. Some didn't work, but I had to try. So that was the key for me. It was like, well, how do you know? You just go there and you try. If not, at least you tried. Yeah.
So it was more of the pursuit of the curiosity.
Yeah.
You're very curious.
Yeah. For me, you can get back. How do you say it? What if? The what ifs that I don't like. Whether there's a picture that maybe just tomorrow. Then tomorrow there's nothing. You cannot get the picture, and then if Yogyakarta, and maybe I'll go. Or maybe I not. Maybe I go. And then it keeps over and over again for like a week. And maybe I should just go to just get over this. And it turns out well. Yeah, it starts from there, from your. For me, it's from my uneasiness because I want to know. Yeah.
I mean, my commentary just with the both of you is that both of you have a background, your profession being photojournalist. I think gives you, that opportunity to also move. The idea of moving around, because if I would compare the case of you two with the slideshow, it's like you guys are motivated also and move around because of your job. And I think in many cases your personal would extend from your professional, because it's like always it's like the drive to move forward. And I think when it's in cases where you don't move around because of your profession, to motivate yourself to take photographs, to go out there would be much different. It's a different process. Yeah, so in your case, I see it more like an extension of your professional going into your personal. But at the same time, based on some of the stuff I've seen from Veejay, it's actually quite challenging to separate the professional with the personal, how to draw that line.
Okay, for my next question, again, I think this would fall for the three of you. I know how important visual literacy is, but some of the trends that I've seen, especially from a younger generation of photographers, is that they don't care about it much. So the question is more of, I want to get your reactions or statement on how important is research about the work, or research and understanding photography and visual literacy in particular.
I think, because I teach visual literacy also, what I've noticed, not only with young photographers, photographers, practicing photographers in general, there's especially if you are working with press photography. I think most of the practitioners comes from a journalistic standpoint, objective. You are not part of the story. So a lot of them parang derive skill from what is needed on the desk. And then eventually if they see things published, photos published by either a competitor or by a colleague, that's the time when their visual language kind of spreads out. Compared to say documentary photography, by practice also, by theory and by practice, documentary photographers parang had a little bit of a free hand when working with the medium because they can work on portraits because they're not time bound. So you can work on portraits. Some of them went a little bit more parang voyeuristic. A lot of them, a good number of them also went to conceptual, representative images. Some of them even went nag-cross ng journalistic and intimacy like Nan Goldin's work. So, going back to your question, I think in the Philippine context, kulang ng venues to learn about work. And also, like they say, hindi mo rin, it's your responsibility to grow your own visual language. But at the same time, it's also hard to learn about Philippine photography if you have to really scour book sale or whatever,
Or somebody's basement.
or have to know the photographers personally, and parang oral history lang karamihan. Now, further on, yun nga, now that the internet and whatever access is very much available, ngayon pa lang tayo nagsisimula. And the idea of visual literacy parang hindi rin siya na-bring up in the last couple of years.
Because for your case, Rony, you know a lot about the scene because I think it's pretty much more. Each photographer is also supporting the other photographers that come out with books and whatnot. So for Indonesia's case at least, is there also cases in Indonesia that like the younger generation are like, don't want to look at that. I just want to focus on mine because if I look on other people's work, my work will be contaminated and all that. Does that happen in Indonesia as well? Or it's more of a close-knit community that you share work, you try to research and understand and pool your knowledge of photography?
Of course, in Indonesia we have a community. It's a community-based environment. Like we have our trusted circle. We have like of course we share like this kind of event. We share regularly. Maybe not every week, but we share. But the thing is, it's a preference. Whether, like you say, you don't want to contaminate it, it's a preference. Maybe it works for that person. Maybe he's a genius, or maybe he's like, yeah, he doesn't need it. But for people who need it, of course, sharing is is needed. And I mean, like visual literacy. To be honest, I'm not really a big fan of theory because I always learn that the biggest teacher is on the field. Because I have like a few books by Roland Barthes, Nan Goldin, not Goldin, Susan Sontag, Gary Badger, John Berger, I never read them. Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sleepy.
I drowned myself.
And I mean like maybe first time I thought maybe this is useful, maybe it will make me smart that it makes me feel dumb. But I think maybe it's a different role. Like maybe it's your role. People like you that supposed to know to analyze other people's work and understand more than the author. Author, I think they just produce work. Of course, if they can understand, it's better. But for my case, I'm very limited in patience to do that. Yeah.
For Ms. Katya, for your case, since you tend to see, you encounter books due to art books, Do you tend to have any observations with regard to the preferences of people who buy books related to photography? Do you see that they have biases towards a certain genre, or some just like to buy zines and anything in particular?
With photo books, for me, it's how can I say it? I think right now the phenomenon is friends buying the books of friends. Okay, it's more like a support approach. And when it's the zines, yes, it's mostly the younger set. I see.